Uh,
Hello.
Hello there.
How are you?
I'm hanging in there. How you feeling?
Doing well. Doing well. How are you?
Can't call it. Trying to make it.
Kab Beer, how's it going, Kab?
Hey, what's up, Tony?
Good, man. Good. Welcome to. We also have Nicole Hercules on the call as well too. I think y'all might know each other.
We definitely do. I love Kab.
How you doing, Nicole?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
Cool.
I got so happy when I heard he was on. I'm like, yes.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
Let's not start any controversy.
Oh, come on, Kab. Come on, man. You know I'm at the start. I need something to get me going.
Diplomatic. Oh, everybody's good.
And just so you know, we got our homeboy Will Webb here as well. Ringo couldn't make it in the night, so we still got a 3-man team. Will's holding it down. He's actually a Liverpool guy as well. So hey, it's 2-on-2. Nicole's breaking the tie.
Yes, there you go.
Hey, Will, how are you? I see you've got taste.
Plenty of taste. I'm doing better now that I know Ox is back in training, so I'm feeling good.
He is, and he will probably play against Tony's team in 2.
Hopefully, we'll have everything up tomorrow because we had trouble last week.
Yeah. We'll that's why we're gonna come out even stronger today. But no, today's kind of what's guiding our discussion today with you guys is obviously that y'all have both been coaching in the game of soccer for a while now, and y'all both have your own path to success and have 2 great tales to tell. And I'd love to hear some of that, but also I want to know a little bit about what got you into, sharing your knowledge of the game and trying to pass it on to the next generation. Whoever wants to step up and, I guess, give a reply.
I'm going to go first just because I want to intro Kab because I played soccer with a couple of his former players. So I think especially really highly of Kab and what he does in the game. So I'm going to go first, if you don't mind, Kab. I played the game since I was 10. I came from a basketball and track background. So when I first picked up a ball and realized that you can kind of dance on it, move with it, I kind of fell in love with the game after watching France play Brazil back in the day, and Ronaldo and Rivaldo and Thierry Henry and Zinedine Zidane were on the field doing their thing, and it was game over for me. So from there, I played at Albany with a couple of Cavs players, and when I was done, all I ever wanted to do was really play the game of soccer. And when I was done playing, coaching was the next thing that made sense for me. So I'm a youngie, so I haven't been coaching as long as Kab. But for me, the most important thing is the advocacy end of coaching. Seeing some of the issues that we have as Blacks in the game of soccer, the lack of representation in the front office, from the youth state associations to the collegiate game to professional league to international games. You're seeing that the representation for Black coaches doesn't really match the quality of coaching that we have in this country. We have some of the best coaches who are developing masterful players, but aren't necessarily seeing and reaping the rewards of the work that they've done. So I just kind of wanted to intro Kab because Kab develops, he has Futsal America. That's a phenomenal program that he's developing national team players all over the place. I played with 2 former players of his, and they would talk about him. Before I even met Kab, I played with 2 former players. So I felt the first time I met him last year in person, I was like, oh, I know you. I felt like I knew him. He was like a father to 2 of my best friends. So I think very highly of him and what he does, and I'll kind of let him get into kind of what he does.
Well, actually, Nicole, I'm going to have to interrupt because I will also intro Kab as well, too, because part of the reason why Kab is here on this call right now is because Kab coached me at Howard. And before I got to Howard, I never had a goalkeeper coach. I was always self-taught. And then working with Kab at Howard, he was the first one to really show me the ABCs of true goalkeeping. But also what I've always appreciated about Kab is we definitely have had our banter before. He is quite blunt and he will critique you, but at the same time, it's not to embarrass you. It comes from a sense of care and wanting to see someone truly develop. And he won't waste his time as far as if there's no potential with you. But that's why he will critique you and let you know these are your weaknesses, these are your strengths, and let's play to both sides and work and improve the weaknesses. So that's my own little spiel about Kab. And Kab, you can go ahead and tell all your glorious accolades and all the, pros that you coached and the trips you have taken. Go ahead and speak upon your journey as going into the game of soccer here in America as to what you've seen also back home in England.
First of all, who said we ain't out here to embarrass anybody? What's the fun in that? I mean, didn't Man United lose 2-0 at home to PSG today?
Yep, I saw that coming. I told you.
It hasn't even been 10 minutes.
Interview's over.
Was that a Buffon testimonial?
Go ahead,
Cam. Go ahead. Nah, but you've all said it already. That we all love the game. We all played the game, and coming from a social country, which England is, it's always about sharing. So whatever you do, whether you're a player on the ball, whether you're a coach, whether you're a referee, administrator, whatever you do in the game, it's about sharing your passion. So that's really what it's about. It's just whatever your level that you're working at, you're just making it relative for that, so whether you're working with little kids or adults, pros or semi-pros or college players, you're just sharing, what I mean, there's no exact science to this thing. Everything is relative to who you get to share your ideas with, share your methods. And, if you have good ideas, ideas that relate to the people that you're working with, then you can have relative success. If you don't have good ideas, then, just like Mourinho, it ain't going to work. But that's important. This guy has won everything in the game as a pro, right? He's won more than anybody else. And he had world-class players at his disposal. And whatever he did, whatever his training, he is a good guy. He's not a bad guy. He's not a poor coach, but he couldn't relate to the players his ideas. And so they haven't been able to perform. So whatever you do in life, it always comes down to the human side of it, right? It doesn't come down to just money. It doesn't just come down to the position you have, the status you have. Every single day, you've got to know how to motivate and inspire other adults or children to perform, and if you can do that, then you can be considered a good manager, a good coach, a good teacher, a good mentor, and then people will respect you for that, but it's never down to records, how much money you have, how many games you win, players you put into national team, or that's nonsense, because that doesn't mean anything at the end of the day, as you just have seen now with Mourinho and his career, right? What you did in the past doesn't mean anything in reality. All that matters is how do you relate to people today.
Well, let me ask you this, Kab, because just to kind of take a quick detour, because something that we mentioned a few weeks ago after Mourinho was fired was I think that what we have right now in this generation is, like, how you had Mourinho and Wenger, and of course the past couple of years, like, neither one of them really had a great ton of success. And what you have is, like, you have a younger generation, like with Klopp and Guardiola, and in some ways Pochettino and Tuchel at PSG, where it's like they're able to kind of connect better with the current generation, whereas the older generation with Mourinho and Wenger, they were having more difficulties with that. Do you think that's more of a generational thing, or, like, where you have to stay kind of in tune with what the players are into now? Like, what's your viewpoint on that?
I mean, there's many facets to that, right? So down again to your frame of reference. people who may be listening to this, if you're working with 12-year-olds, right, you're not going to be able to relate to 16 or 23-year-olds if your experience is dealing with pre-puberty. So I don't know how much experience Mourinho or even Wenger have with dealing with teenage players in an environment where not only do you have to win every game, but you got to win in front of 75,000, 60,000 people every week, and millions of fans around the world, and billions of dollars in terms of investment and sponsorship and TV rights. So, you know, there are different pressures that we as regular human beings that are just, you know, passing on our knowledge of the game, you know, we don't know all these facets on a daily basis. You know, you watch a game on TV, you know, you don't know today if Rashford had a stomach bug, you know, right. or you know, did Luke Shaw have a slight problem with his ankle? Did he have flu? You know, did his girlfriend, you know, go out with his brother? You know, you don't know these things.
Why are you referencing gigs, man? Why are you trying to bring in the gigs?
Human development, human behavior, you know. But that's what, you know. It's easy to criticize somebody. It's easy to praise somebody without knowing them, right? And so you've got to know the human side of development when you're working with anybody. You know, your staff, your players, your ownership, your sponsors, the ladies in the cafeteria. You know, permit me to be sexist if they are ladies. It could be fellas. I mean, but you know, that's what it is. It's human side of it. So, you know, maybe with Mourinho, as Martial said in the press conference yesterday, hey, this coach, he's making me attack more. He's allowing us a bit more freedom to go forward, whereas the other coach didn't. So maybe Mourinho, in the way that he works with the previous skill set of players that he had in the past, that methodology of being more reserved with the ball in your movements, in your positioning, work for those mentalities. This being a younger group of players that he's not used to working with at this age, he's like, I can't get these guys to perform the way I want them to because they don't have that experience of maintaining things. You know, they don't have the experience of winning things at the club level. You know, Pogba has won a World Cup, but that's not enough to perform week in, week out in the Premier League. Right. You know, in the rain, in the snow, in the mud, in that 30,000 seat stadium to a 75,000 seat stadium. Everything in football, everything is relative.
Gotcha. So Nicole, of course, we mentioned earlier that you are an executive director with the Rochester State League. Is that City League? Is that
right? City Soccer League. Yeah, I started a league in the inner city of Rochester because there wasn't a place for a lot of the kids to play. We have some extremely skilled kids, and this fall actually was a lot of fun because what we did is throughout the rec centers, we took the basketballs away. You know, we put goals up into the gyms, and they were soccer havens. So we would have kids who were coming in. They're looking to play basketball. They have their basketballs, and they're like, what's going on here, right? And we're like, well, for the next month, it's going to be soccer. So you have these kids who are coming in, and they started out angry, you know, because they're like, they couldn't play basketball. Then I would put my most skillful kids, you know, they're playing this game. It's 5v5. You know, what does this sound like? You know, they're extremely skillful with their feet. They're competing hard. This is different type of grit. They're trying to break each other's ankles. And they realize that this fast, high-flying, exciting game. These kids who came in here, you know, thinking soccer was whack, you know, they're walking out of this gym saying, when is practice? Like, I want to play that sport. Like, that game is for us. So I think, and Cab's big on this too, is introducing soccer in inner cities in a way that appeals to all people is an avenue to welcome new opportunities to people from different communities who wouldn't otherwise play. So that's one of the things I love about my league. You know, I have kids from the ages of 4 to 7. In one league, I have 8 to 10-year-olds. In another league, I have 11 to 13. I have a U19 league, and I had to expand up to U23 because we just have so many kids who want the opportunity to play. Unfortunately, they only get one practice and one game a week, and that's not enough. We all know that's not enough for them. They want to play 24/7. We have this high refugee population, and these kids are out here just balling hard. And we go live, and I have people calling me just wanting to know when soccer is, when they can play. I had someone from Africa calling me. I was like, how do you think you're going to get here to play? I mean, I'm glad you want to jump in, but I don't know how I'm going to get you there. It's a great game, and it's a game that I think many people think are just for one race and one population, but once they see it played in a way that's different, and that's fun and that's fast and that's skillful, they recognize that it's a sport that's exciting, and that's for everybody. It's the world's game.
Well, you actually posed a very good question there, and I'll open up for everyone, including you, Tony. As coaches, what's been, I guess, your biggest obstacle as far as attracting kids that are basically in the hood to wanting to try out soccer? Because just like how you were saying, Nicole, you have that resistance initially, and you kind of still have to sell them as far as what makes this game attractive.
I'll say this: after working 30 years in the DC area, money and resources like facilities, right?
Yes.
If you don't have green space, whether that's grass or a turf field in a inner city neighborhood, it's almost impossible to get a low income family to travel 30 minutes outside their neighborhood to go to a practice, never mind a game on a weekend, because they just don't have the time, so they're going to, if you got single family parents, it's going to be impossible. And even if you have 2 working parents, they just don't have access to just get to work, pick up a kid from school, bring them to a practice, and then go, back to work or whatever. So it's very hard. You have to make the game accessible. So that requires facilities, and then if you're going to develop players that are going to be competitive, then, they're going to eventually go into the travel arena, and that costs money. So that's another deterrent. So if we, in Europe, that's solved through social government services, right? So no kid is left behind. There are free programs, free facilities, free leagues for most kids in most neighborhoods, not every neighborhood.
That's almost non-existent here in the States now.
I was able to do that. I mean, I have a relationship with City Rock and with the school district. So I have no overhead costs. I mean, uniforms is one thing, but I have access to all of the gyms, whether it's the city recreation gyms, or it's the high school gyms, or if it's the turf fields for outdoor, or the stadium that's no longer being used for the Rhinos in this area. My community has worked really hard to make sure that kids have access. But I will say this, that's also because it's taken years of talking to the right people and building the right relationships, people who understand, but also see that there's a byproduct of playing this sport, right? We also set a really high standard of academics. I have 3 valedictorians this year. So when we start pitching to them that not only are we offering these kids soccer in a place where they're safe, they're warm, they have a meal and different things, but we're also making sure that we're providing academic support and different things that are going to help our kids succeed off and on the field. People buy into that and they want to help you. So that worked for me, and it is very difficult, and everything that Kab said is tough. Transportation is the biggest issue. That's why providing opportunities right in kids' neighborhoods where they can play in their backyards is extremely important if you're in an inner city. Kab hit everything. The parents have a very difficult time getting their kids from places sometimes. A lot of parents are working, and these kids will play soccer 24/7 if you give them a place to play, and we're just trying to do that.
And that's crazy. You're talking about just 30 minutes outside of where they live. Of course we've heard stories like like with Cliff Dipsy, where like he had to travel a good 2.5 hours. So like just 30 minutes, like that's a quick ride from here. That's like going down the south side. So that's incredibly tough.
And don't forget, sorry to interrupt, but don't forget, with the gentrification of almost every city in the United States, the traffic in the city has multiplied exponentially. So now what would be a 15, 25-minute ride across town is 45 minutes plus. So even if you do a training session or have a game in the city, it could take up to an hour for a kid in an inner city community to get to that practice or game. And that just rules them out. There's just no way they can handle that week to week. So we've got to create another environment to engage them in their own communities and in their own schools, because that's really the key, is getting the game in the schools.
Kab, I wonder if this is an issue for you, because I know even up to yesterday, I have developmental academies, the DAs knocking at the door now wanting, to get involved. And in order for that to happen, again, that you have kids who are commuting, but that's in the eye of U.S. soccer is the pipeline to potentially playing on a national team. So now you have these players who you're developing and who are playing and who are having a great time playing free and creatively in their backyards with their friends. Now they're kind of getting picked up by some of these DAs. They're playing for these teams and they're playing in these stifled systems, and they're no longer necessarily looking like their old selves. But there's all these other issues because transportation's a problem. So it's just tough. But that's the pipeline for kids to play at the next level. Kab, what do you do with situations with? You're not a development academy, are you?
No.
Okay.
No, we're a skills program. Futsal America is just year-round training, and then you get the opportunity. The kids who are enrolled full-time play both outdoor and indoor. So, indoor it's futsal, although they do play outdoor futsal, and then outdoor they'll play in regional leagues in the DC, Virginia, Maryland area. But that also includes Delaware, Pennsylvania, depending on the teams that are there. But you can't create a solution on nothing, right? So even if you have a totally free program, if there's nowhere to play, then you can show up at a field and the kids can't get there. So you've got to go into these communities, and the only way you can do that is either at the rec centers or the schools. And the rec centers only usually will have one gym, so that's already being utilized by basketball, especially in Washington D.C. Outdoor, there's just nothing there, because even if you have kids, say the youngest kids, 4, 5, 6, 7, you can get them at 4 o'clock. You can get them on a field. As soon as it hits 5, 6 o'clock, now you got the travel kids paying to use those fields. And then after them, you've got the adult social leagues. And that in every city in the U.S., adult social leagues now is the multi-million-dollar industry. So they're taking all the prime time hours of every lighted turf field or grass field in any city. So now what was already a problem in the 90s when we started in the city is now multiplied by 10, because there's a new generation of people that have moved into these cities. So futsal is the only way to engage kids in the inner city year-round in their neighborhoods, because there are still enough outdoor basketball courts, tennis courts, parking lots that maybe haven't been taken over by basketball or by gentrification of buying lots and building condos on that land. So you can start futsal programs, like even on a school playground, and get a bunch of kids involved with the game and try to teach them the skills so that they can have some fun with the ball. Go ahead.
I hate to interrupt. I just want to make sure. There's a question that's burning me to ask both of you guys, and because currently I'm working on my D license within the U.S. Soccer Federation, and ever since they revamped the whole licensing system, you got the grassroots model with the 4v4, 77, 99, 11, 11. Now I'm on to the D, and they've definitely made the whole focus on their play, practice, play model.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is based on the research that they've gotten from France, obviously France being World Cup winners again and everything. And the discussions I've had with some of my colleagues, with some other coaches within the program, within the license program, I would want to hear your guys' opinion about this and if it's going to be a viable curriculum, if you will, here in the States based upon all our different issues that we got going on.
Kab, take this one away. I already know where you're going with this.
I know it too. I'm lobbing this up, Kab. I'm lobbing it up.
Put it down. Throw in the lob.
Well, look, 30 years of dealing with U.S. soccer. No U.S. soccer curriculum has ever worked, right? So the way they jump from trend to trend and this method to that method, let's understand what U.S. soccer deals with, right? They are middle-class people who live in middle-class neighborhoods and deal with middle-class kids and wealthy kids. So that's the perspective from which they create their models. As much as I love the educational system in the United States and college sports, I've never seen a world-class player come from college soccer.
Thank you.
So if you create a curriculum to nurture players for college, you're not going to develop national team level players that can compete with the rest of the world. Yeah, you can beat Jamaica, you can beat Guatemala, which you should do because you've got more money and resources and more importantly, you have numbers that are bigger than many countries' populations, never mind the soccer population. So what you identified in that frame of reference that they have is how do I create something that will reach all kids, right? That will nurture all kids, not just one particular group, one particular neighborhood, city, academy, or whatever. So yeah, play, practice, play sounds great, right? If you put it into practical terms, yeah, if kids come to a practice session and they're playing, they can play. In England, we call it Wembley. Here, they call it World Cup. Let them play. Great. That'll get rid of some of that nervous energy. And by the time they've played it, they may actually listen to you when you finally put them in a group and talk to them. See, the problem in America is that you have so many people from different levels of the game that adults want to teach, right? Not everybody, but most adults want to teach. They want to impart their knowledge on kids and make them, like PSG, right? Or Barcelona. They want to get that from them. So their expectation is, I work with a kid, I practice with the kid at receiving a ball and passing a ball. Now you should be able to pass the ball like you're Modric. Right? so look, I've spent 2 hours with you. You should know how to kick a ball back, right? But there is no creativity from that environment. There is no imagination. There's no working with improvisation. So the kid doesn't get to experiment. They're being taught something in an isolated environment, right? Doing something over a 5-yard distance or a 10-yard distance. And so they're not getting a chance to experiment. If you watch any child in the front of a video game, they practice for hours on end without any conversation with anybody but the person they're playing with, right? And they lose constantly, right? They're getting killed every shot, whether they're playing Fortnite or FIFA, they're getting shot and they keep playing. They're getting scored upon and they keep playing. In other words, they're making thousands of mistakes a day. And still learning to master the techniques of the game, which buttons to press, which techniques to use to solve the problem. And then eventually they master that level and they go to the next level. That's how you develop in soccer. You've got to fail 1,000 times a day to master something. And so a curriculum of whatever U.S. soccer provides is not going to develop a creative player that could one day become, this world star the way Michael Jordan did in basketball. And just using that as a quick example, Michael Jordan failed in high school and came back as the best basketball player in history, right? Why? Because he took the negative and he turned it into a positive. He didn't have a coach, do drills with him, right? He just took his street game and took it to another environment, and somebody else believed in him, and then his skills started coming out as he matured, and became the world's best. Now, that's an extreme example. It's not going to happen with everybody, and that's why I said to you, football is relative. You've got to know how to deal with the human being. If you know how to deal with the human being, you can get more out of that human being. You can modify that person's behavior. And once you modify somebody's behavior, they can improve. They can perform better. They can play with more confidence. They can play with more creativity. If you box them in and you try to do things based on what Barcelona are doing or what PSG are doing or what Bayern Munich are doing, well, guess what? You don't have Neymar in your team. You don't have Marcelo. You don't have Modric. You don't have. So you cannot perform like those clubs. So why are you following their methodology? Why are you following France? Nobody in the United States lives in Paris. So in dealing with the kids in our communities, we got to know how to relate to them, and that may be through music, maybe through fashion, a variety of sports. But, that's why I said futsal, it's as close to N1 basketball as there is. Kids can relate to that. But they don't have to be 6'4" to play it. They don't have to be 300 pounds to play. They don't have to be able to mentally focus on swinging a bat to hit one ball. They can be free. Just like every European kid and South American kid learned on the street and then became Neymar and Messi and Pele and Ronaldinho and all these world's best players. Give the game back to these kids in the street and they will show you how to play.
And that's the truth. And there's so many different surfaces that people learn the game on. And I think we're so used to playing on this well-manicured grass. When you're in Brazil, there's a janitor that can whoop your butt because it's 24/7. There's the landlady who will tear you apart because they're playing on the beach, right? When you're touching, there's a wave hit and you have to take a touch differently. When you're playing on the street and there's a rock, there's a pebble, the ball's going to move differently. And these guys have still mastered to play in pressure situations skillfully and find ways out of these pressure situations to be creative, to be skillful, to have fun doing these things that we can't do because we're so used to having practice on this perfect turf or grass field. And we're being told exactly how to think and what to do. And you haven't allowed kids to have this free time with their friends where they're literally trying things that they're seeing and things that they've never seen before. I remember I thought I was making up all types of moves. I was naming things, the Herculator, the Nick and Knight. Like I was naming all types of things after me that I'm like,
can we get video footage of the Herculator, please?
No, they've all been done before. There's nothing new under the sun. I learned later that I wasn't making anything up.
Let me show you a prime example here, right? You're obviously you guys know what Pop Warner football is, right? You got Pee Wee football, right? You got 5, 6, 7-year-old kid playing tackle football. They're going in hard, with their helmets, banging each other, right? I see in DC, and I'm pretty sure it's every city, I see these kids, man, train 3, 4 times a week, and they are, before and after every practice, they're throwing the ball at each other and running after each other and tackling, pumping their chest, and they're only 5, 6, and 7 years old. They ain't 14, 15, right? U.S. Soccer says to their kids, you can't get the ball till you're 12 years old. You understand the difference? That's the mentality. U.S. Soccer is so scared of liability and insurance and all them things that they've already destroyed the mentality of the kids in this country at being creative, right? Whereas in every inner city community where kids are playing basketball and football, they're expressing themselves every day for hours before practice, after practice. And that's the difference right now. If you took those pee-wee football kids and you gave them a small soccer ball and you said, run with the ball and take on your man and beat him 4, 5, 6, 7 times, trust me, they'll come out with moves that'll go viral around the world. Because whatever happens in urban American culture, urban American youth becomes a global culture that every other kid around the world looks up to. And you've already seen that in Atlanta with Atlanta United. You've got all the hip-hop artists coming to MLS games, wearing the jerseys, and now all these hip-hop artists want to wear the jerseys, right? You've got Drake talking about Beckham and all this. You've got something there that if the inner cities of America really engage in this sport, every world-class player in the world will take notice that this is the place to be. America can be the Champions League of the world if they give the game to the inner cities.
Absolutely.
But they're holding it back. They're holding it because they lost all their other sports. So they're just, they're just doing enough to create a little bit of a social PR, but not enough to give it to everybody. Because they want to make money from it for themselves. They want to control it for themselves. And that's what it comes down to. And that's not just U.S. Soccer. That's every governing body in the world is just trying to control the game for themselves. It's whether they win or not is not the issue. It's always about power. It's always about control.
They actually you mentioned something, Nicole, that I'm going to get to in just a second about the quality of fields, especially and how it affected our ability to fail in qualifying for the World Cup. I wanted to ask y'all a quick question. As far as like in becoming a coach and the cost involved with becoming a coach, like what? How can I put this, Coach? What basically are you getting with the amount of money that you're spending to become a coach here in America?
I was tell you, for me, I look for, this is going to sound bad. I look for coaches outside of America, like Brazilian coaches, Haitian coaches, coaches who understand my players, because I have such a high refugee population. I need coaches who can kind of understand their style of play, and can kind of coach the style of soccer that I love the most, and the style of soccer that I think I'm going to look forward to seeing my country play. So in my mind, I'm always thinking, how am I going to make soccer in the U.S. better with my program? How can I make this program better? So I personally, I stepped away from coaching, and I'm trying to bring in some of the best coaches to work with my teams, so that I can see what we can do in player development and in coaching development to change the way that things are done and to do things a little bit differently. I'm always trying to do something a little outside of the box. So I don't mind if I have a coach who may have done Brazilian training or UEFA. I kind of prefer it. That's going to sound horrible, but I kind of prefer that.
No, you're fine. Because here's what I see. Because I'll look at, because I've had friends of mine, including Tony, that have tried to refer me, and then trying to get into coaching myself, and then I look at like the cost, the amount of money that it takes to become licensed in America. Then I look at, and then I hear about like it costs only like $600 in Spain or $400 in Germany, and I'm like, why am I spending $3,000 for, mind you, in this country, because especially, well, I think it affects both men and women, because the systems are closed. It's like, how exactly do you really prove yourself when, the opportunities to really step up to a higher level really aren't there?
Yeah.
So y'all could elaborate.
well, I'm just, because I completely agree with what you're saying, because, and I had this conversation with the last president of U.S. Soccer, Sunil Gulati, when he was in Western New York, and I was asking him about the lack of opportunities for coaches of color, because we have quality coaches who have the accolades, who have done just phenomenal things in this game. And Sunil, part of his presentation, he addressed it, and he talked about the lack of diversity and that they're aware of it. But a lot of times when you bring a coaching staff on, they bring along with them who they're comfortable with. And sometimes that's people who they look like. So our coaches sometimes just don't get those opportunities. I will say that Mike Curry, who's one of the United Soccer coaches, he does a lot with the foundation now. They have a foundation that's going to help with coaching education grants. So a lot of the inner city coaches, or any of the coaches that kind of need some help getting their coaching education licenses, he'll be helping with funding and different things. So I believe it's in August, there will be some grants out through the United Soccer coaches to help with this issue that we're talking about. But he was he was the goalkeeper coach that Jurgen Klinsmann brought on, because he met Jurgen Klinsmann at one of these conventions. Jurgen Klinsmann kept him in mind and thought, man, we need some diversity. I need to bring in someone who's different. And through that relationship, he kept Mike Curry's information. And when he was coach with the U.S. national team, he brought this guy in because he looked different. And he was different. And he was American. So I love that story. Mike just told that to me when we were at the convention in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. And I thought that was very cool. That was Jurgen Klinsmann's thought process, was to bring people in who were different, so that he could kind of have that iron sharpens iron with different people from different backgrounds, and kind of stay sharp and keep fresh and new ideas. I thought that was wonderful.
Nicole, you touched upon about how people hire who they feel comfortable with, and I totally agree with that. The one thing I've definitely experienced being here in the South, and as a person who is born and raised here in Georgia, I don't have an accent. My parents didn't come from a foreign country, and I am that suburban black kid that came through. But there's already sometimes a bias for coaches that have an accent or come from a different country. Whereas if you're just, I hate to say it, but a regular old black coach, it's almost like people don't trust that, because they're like, wait, you're just black and you play soccer? No, that doesn't happen. And so there's already these kind of prejudices that a coach has to have a foreign idea. And I get everything what you touched upon, a part of, bringing different styles and different, concepts and different tactical abilities. But I will say, as far as, being a black coach here in the States, and someone who is born and raised in the States, it's almost like another strike against you. If you're from here, it's almost like you're cursed from being from here too, which is one of the struggles that I deal with currently.
Well, you know what I think? I think there is this push for Black American born coaches. And for a while, I was afraid that I was going to create this type of divide, because I'm trying not to get too controversial.
Please, no. Come on.
Oh, man, I got to keep it PC. I'm going to leave it right there. But there is a push in support of more Black American born coaches. And I'm just going to stop right there.
Okay. I hear you. No, Kab, I also wanted to revisit something you touched upon earlier with the style of play. And you were talking about, the creativity and the improv, and you you will be happy to know that if you recall back when you were training both myself and at Howard with goalkeeping, and one thing I loved about training with Jason was that we kind of created our whole and one of goalkeeping. And so he and I kind of came up with this whole thing where we always had to distribute doing around the back passes or through the legs. Till this day, even in my adult leagues, I have to do an around the back pass distributing out the back as a goalkeeper. And it's just one of those things, like you said, as part of our culture, it provides that style and that, that je ne sais quoi that we just bring to the game, if you will.
Man, I saw, growing up as a kid, the two greatest goalkeepers in the world. By the way, the very best goalkeeper in history, Gordon Banks, died today.
Just passed away today, yeah.
Rest in peace, Mr. Banks. But after Gordon Banks, the next great goalkeeper, at least from England, was Ray Clemence.
Mm-hmm.
And with Ray Clemence in the 70s and 80s, he won everything, right? He won 3 European Cups, which is now the Champions League, as well as a dozen English leagues, which is now Premier League. Right. But after technically, Ray Clemence had zero floor to play with his feet. He could catch shots. He'd come, make catches from crosses. And you saw, I don't know if you saw the Wolves game yesterday, where right at the end of the game, the goalkeeper jumped for the ball on his line, and he went to catch it. And
instead of punching.
And the Newcastle goalkeeper went to catch it. Dubrovska, I think his name is. And the Wolves player headed the ball through his hands, right? So the art of catching the ball has gone from goalkeepers today. Now it's just block a shot. Look, it's like De Gea. It's basically futsal goalkeeping. You're using every part of your body, but
kick saves and all that,
which is the improvisation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the problems for goalkeepers today is that they're being pulled away from the team, trained in isolation, then expected to perform in crowded penalty areas under pressure from not only the opposing striker but defenses.
Mm-hmm.
Best goalie I saw in the world in history who could deal with that was Bruce Grobbelaar. And Bruce Grobbelaar, who came in after Ray Clemence in the late 80s and early 90s, did exactly what you and Jason used to do and throw the ball from behind his back, through his legs. The man did handstands. I was in Rome. At 17 years old, I was in Rome. It was the Champions League final. We were playing Roma on their own field in the final, winning penalty kicks. This man, he was twerking. He was doing all kinds of stuff.
Shaky knees.
Right? And putting off these Italian players, and they were kicking the ball over the bar because they were just like bamboozled by this guy.
Yeah.
And that is, that's improvisation, man. That's what I want to see from anybody. It's great if you can do something technically well, but when you're under pressure, just come up with something off the top of your head to make the save, to make the shot, to make the play, just improvise. And that's what we got to let kids do, is let them teach us how to play instead of us always teaching them how to play.
Absolutely.
So question for you guys. Actually, going back to what I was going to ask here, because Nicole, you have brought up, the issue of players not wanting to play on fields that are below quality, as I guess you could say. Now, Kab, I know that from what Tony was telling me, I guess you had a bit of a relationship with Bruce Arena going back to the DC United days, and I just wanted to get y'all's feedback as far as what direction the men's national team is going through, and also the women's national team is also kind of going through the same issues as well.
It's going to be an interesting World Cup.
And there you have it, folks.
It's I don't want to disparage any individual person, and their influence on the game. But so I'll just say in general, right, that there have been people in the past in this country that have been given positions of power and responsibility for our sport, for our clubs, that have not had the best interests, even in the national team position. Certain people have tried to put their own people in staff. It's kind of like a president picking their own cabinet, right? So they want to pick their own people for the high power positions, knowing full well that those positions aren't just assistant coach, but in positions that even when you're gone, they're still going to be there. So in other words, you may be gone as the head coach, as the director or whatever, but your ideas and your legacy is going to remain.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore the continuation of your system and your values continues to be prevalent throughout the pyramid from top to bottom. It never works in this country bottom up. It only works top down. Everybody looks at the top and wants to copy the top, and because they want to reach the top. Nobody looks at the bottom and say, hey, how can we improve this the foundation, right? I mean, build a house with a roof, and then build the walls and the floor. You got to dig a hole and dig it deep enough so that your foundations will last for decades. They don't do that. They do it the other way. And so the people at the top only build from the top. And that's why everything underneath them continues to crumble. And crumbled from, like you said, the men's national team to now the women's national team, because it's the same ideas, the same people, the same backgrounds, the same education, the same frame of reference, all through. It's all in England we call it an old boys act, and it's it's just like when you go in Congress, and you just see the same old faces there till they die.
Damn, Kab is dropping knowledge.
Yes, man.
So we're not going to see a change in that, unfortunately, because the opportunity for change was lost the day when Galati resigned, and we had an opportunity as a voting base to vote the next person in, and all the potentially revolutionary figures that were in that presidential race, they lost, and they lost big time.
Yeah.
Because it was always, like I said before, about money, about control. It was about getting that World Cup. So they got their 2026 World Cup, and guess what happened? The FBI stopped investigating FIFA. Oh, what a surprise. Right? So when you didn't get the World Cup, FBI was on everybody's backside. But as soon as they got the World Cup, nobody hears about FIFA anymore, and all their corruption and all those people that were involved. It's completely dropped. And that should have been the biggest revelation from all of this, that this game will never change for the betterment of people in poorer, low-income, urban environments, until, of course, their gentrification plan is complete and they've moved everybody out, and now they're in the cities.
Yep.
And that's what's happening. That's what's happening. So now you can't say, urban, in 10 years' time, you won't be saying, oh, we need to help the urban communities. We're going to be talking about, the communities outside the urban center.
Rural, yeah.
Exactly.
There was also one point I remember last year when Sunil Gulati, right before he left, and he spoke at the youth soccer organization, like dinner ball or whatever it was. And this was him really campaigning to make himself look good. And, at the dinner, it was supposed to be celebrating youth soccer. All he spoke about was bragging about what he had accomplished.
I think I heard about that.
But also what was disgusting about it, too, was that he kept bragging about how much money he has in the coffers as far as U.S. soccer is concerned, and that, financially what we have in savings is great. Kept on harping on that.
Yeah.
But what are you doing with that money though? It's like it's great that you have a surplus. Like I think like right now the surplus is like 150 million. But I'm like, okay, it's great that we have all this money, but what are we doing with it? Because otherwise, it's basically more of the same, and it becomes insulting after a while because it's like, okay, great that you have this money, but we have a program that's in bad need of improvement, and it was one thing when the men's team, it had its ups and downs and everything, but for the most part, the women's side was always the standard bearer, all country. And now, and honestly, I probably say it probably goes back to, actually, you could probably say even the last World Cup, because the last Women's World Cup, there were low expectations then too. But of course, we managed to win that. Then you had the 2016 Olympics. Of course, the men didn't even qualify for that. And then the women, I think they went out either in the group stage or in the first knockout round. Yeah. So, and of course, the time has gone on, and you've seen there's still the expectations are kind of shaky as far as what's going to happen in France. Like you just saw, even despite they had a really long winning streak, like they got pretty much smacked by France. I think last month. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a case of where a lot needs to be fixed, but nobody really wants to address it. I guess because that would cost money, and who wants to use all this money that we suddenly have?
It's in the women's game. It's not a money issue. That's a red herring, right? So that's more about equality. That's like Title IX rights, where you would expect the players and the coaches to be paid the same as the men, right? So that's another argument. In the women's game, it's the same issue as the men's game. It's who is in charge. Mm-hmm. Ideas are running the game. I've been around the women's game since '89. So before they won their first World Cup, I was part of the women's game in the United States. The reason they were successful for 10 years from '89 to '99 was because there was no competition. Right. You only had
nobody was playing, literally.
Well, I don't want to say that because China was playing,
Norway, Germany.
Sweden was playing. In the Scandinavian countries, they're not as sexist as England and France and Spain and the southern European countries, right? In Asia, again, same thing. They put just as many resources into their women or their girls' participation in sports as America does. So that's why you see them always compete in China, for example, in the Olympics, right? But soccer is not their prevalent sport. So they didn't develop soccer players. They in most of the world, from Africa to Asia, when I say Asia, meaning East Asia, Southeast Asia, Western Europe, it's always been sexism. Right, so even in Brazil, right, we always consider Brazil to create the most skillful players. There are no girls' leagues in Brazil.
Right.
Go to Rio, the biggest city in Brazil. You will not find a girls' league like you can find here in D.C. or New York or Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Right? So, but yet they always put a team in a World Cup and the Olympics. And why are they doing that? That's through futsal. Right, so all those girls are playing with men or boys, right? But they're not playing in organized leagues. So Marta, 5-time World Player of the Year, she never won a national championship for Brazil. She never won a state cup, Right. Never won girls. I got a trophy. I'm the best team in the area because I won 3 games on a weekend. Look. Love that. That's dumb.
See sombrero Neymar every day.
I love it. The girls' game has been the only game in town. Now, in the last, I'd say, a dozen years, they've invested more money in the national team program. Still not really. Still hasn't filtered into the schools. There are no high schools playing girls' soccer anywhere in Europe, right? But they do have private clubs, and these clubs are funded socially, meaning through the government. And then you'll have a few private clubs. So, for example, in England, we'll now have Women's Premier and Super League. So you've
right.
teams like Arsenal, Manchester United just started a women's.
They just got their team.
Yeah.
They just got one.
So look, Real Madrid doesn't even have
I know it's crazy,
right?
Wow.
So Ajax doesn't even have a women's team. So there are still big multi-billionaire clubs that have no interest in developing the girls' side, even if it promotes more females coming to their games and more female fans, which they should be doing. I had this big argument with DC United when I worked with them about that, saying you need to promote equally the girls' side as you do the men's side. And they told me they are only in the business of selling tickets. They weren't they weren't even interested in youth development in the 90s. And this was a problem that I had with them. And I said, I'm done with it. I gave them 2 years. I said, I'm done with them because they don't know. They don't care. They only want to sell tickets. They thought by bringing in 3 Bolivians, the entire Hispanic community of Washington would come out to watch them. This is how ignorant these people are. Because
did you also mention like you're trying to sell out RFK Stadium too, which was a good guy, like a trash stadium at the time too? You know?
It's RFK is a tough one, but if it had worked something out,
special place. That's a special place.
They could have rebuilt RFK, right? Yeah. The city wasn't, again, politically motivated at that time.
They still want the Redskins for some reason.
They do. I don't get it. Oh, it's still a goal, man, because now you've got all these customers who've moved into the city, right? Everyone in the 90s was leaving the city. Now
they came back.
Now they're coming back. Now they want to bring the Redskins back in because it's so difficult to get to FedEx Field.
I've been to FedEx once it was for Man United and Barcelona. Like it's the year after they met in the Champions League final, and that place, one, it's a sweat box to no end, and then 2, getting out there, like even if you take the metro, like that's just
it's traffic. A 3-year journey to get out there.
What annoys me is that in the 90s we had a World Cup here, we had Olympics here, so local kids could go and watch a World Cup game and Olympic soccer and Barcelona and Man United and Real Madrid in the city. Mm-hmm. Now they got to go outside the city to watch that. DC will never host a World Cup or Olympics or a major international game ever again.
Oh my gosh!
And this is the nation's capital. Can you imagine never going to Wembley, never going to Paris, never going to Rome to watch a international game? Well, that's Washington D.C., the most powerful city in the world, supposedly has no world-class soccer to watch ever until they build another major stadium in this city. So what do? They build a tennis-sized stadium of 20,000 seats on the waterfront and say, we're sold out.
You know what though? Because like, for those who know me, they know that of course I've been following MLS since day one. Like I remember the very first game in San Jose. So like I followed these. I was up in Richmond, and so like I knew all too well about all the stadium attempts and everything, and like just how you're saying like with the new stadium, like even beyond the DC United games, of course you still had international friendlies. Sometimes you had occasional qualifiers there, and like for the size of what Audi Field is now, you can't even get those friendlies now because it's so small. And it's a shame because for a city with that strong of it's a really big soccer hotbed, and you're basically saying like, hey, we're going to just focus on DC United and not worry about trying to get all these other events that would make it even more attractive to want to have a soccer event there. And
it was all about raising ticket prices. They had no way of getting 20,000 people in RFK, and they were losing so much money. Now they can say, hey, we got Rooney at 35 years old, and now we can sell tickets for $90. Yeah, right.
But shit, you can't even you can't even get a local TV deal because they just got the deal with Flow Sports and I'd never heard of it until they announced the deal. So it's like you have all this, you had all this momentum, and you basically just said, hey, we're going to make you get on this streaming platform that nobody's ever heard of. Like, you could even do YouTube TV. You couldn't do there's a number of options out here that you could have done outside of some unknown platform, and you're shooting yourselves in the foot, and not to mention you're taking yourselves off TV, which people still need an option on TV. Like not everyone is caught up to cutting cable and everything. So that's a real missed opportunity. Before I let y'all go, Nicole, tell us more about what you're doing with the United Soccer Coaches, and I guess like you're moving into a new role this year.
I don't know about this year, but yeah, I shouldn't even talk about that. But yeah, I'm with the United Soccer Coaches, Black Soccer Coaches group. Kab's in this group with us as well. I'm in one of the leadership positions. I'll say that. Yeah, there's some amazing things that we'll be doing this year. So, I mean, we'll definitely have to jump back on and kind of talk about it when we can. But there's some cool things that we're going to be doing just to kind of make sure that we're promoting soccer in the Black community, and that we're building a Black soccer infrastructure where the game's able to grow, and we're able to see our coaches and our players and our administrators and our officials advance. There's been a lot of people who put some great work down, starting with Lincoln Phillips, who was the first chair. Howard Mann, and a lot of amazing chairs who have been visionaries, who just have a great idea on the things that we can do. And we're going to try to move a lot of their goals and their visions forward in the next coming years, and really make some moves doing it together as a community. So we're excited for that. And I want to say this: you guys are Atlanta guys. Kab, I know you probably want to get out there too. I want to check out Atlanta game, man. It looks like so much
Come on
fun.
down.
Bring it.
Come on down. Seriously,
get me some tickets, man. And I'm there. I want to get out there. It looks like so much fun.
It is. It's the best sporting event. Seriously, it is. I mean, I know we're biased and everything, but honestly, it's the best sporting event, hands down, in the Southeast. Obviously it helps that you have a team that's winning. Yeah. But the fact that the culture within Atlanta has changed, is thriving, and the energy that's coming around the city, it's amazing to be a part of that experience. And of course, the modern marvel of the stadium, it's amazing as well. But y'all definitely have to come, and you gotta do the tailgate. You gotta be in the supporter section.
Look,
if you want to keep it classy, there's definitely a little bit of classiness for y'all up there.
This is how big.
William will definitely get right during the tailgate.
If you come meet me, I will get you guys set up real nice.
Okay, well, I'm doing
not
it.
Too nice, not my level.
Doing it. That's my goal, is to get out there for a game. So maybe sometime in August or September, I'm going to be visiting.
This is how big Atlanta is, right? That you got for last final 73,000, and Super Bowl only got 70. Now, I never thought in my lifetime I would see an MLS crowd big.
MLS
Super Bowl, not even an NFL, a Super Bowl. Come on,
top
Shout out to Ringo.
That's big, man. You guys are
cool. So, in case anybody wants to holler at y'all, where can they find y'all on social media?
You can catch me always at the Rochester City Soccer League on Facebook, Instagram, and our webpage is the RochesterCitySoccerLeague.com. I'm also always posting on the United Soccer Coaches, Black Soccer Coaches group page. Check out our Black History Month write-ups that are going on right now. That's where you can find me, Nicole Hercules.
We're on YouTube, Futsal America TV. Loads of video on that, training, games, skills, everything on that, and Futsal America FC.com.
Cool. Man, this interview has actually blown my expectations out the water. I thank y'all so much. We will absolutely have y'all back on here sooner rather than later. But yeah, thank you y'all so much for coming on.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Tony. By the way, I've heard a lot about you from Kab told me about you a couple weeks ago, so it's nice to find.
Oh, I'm scared what he said.
No, I'm on. You know, I talked to Greg mentioned you too, so I was like, oh, I gotta meet this Tony guy. So things about people. It's always on a Facebook page where he's saying something bad, but no, it's Kab. Really nice.
Cool. Can't wait to meet you. Can't wait to meet you.
Y'all take it easy.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.